Welcome to the Morning English Podcast. Listen, learn, and speak English daily.
Usually when we talk about learning a new skill, whether that's, coding or playing the guitar or cooking, we tend to picture this very logical linear progression.
Right, like a scarecase.
Exactly. You start at step A, you practice, you move to step B, and eventually, you arrive at mastery. The brain really likes that kind of predictable staircase.
No, absolutely. It craves that structure.
But then, and I think anyone who's tried this will agree, you step into the world of learning a new language, and specifically the English language, and suddenly all that neat logic just completely evaporates.
It just goes right out the window.
Yeah, picture this. You're in the middle of a conversation. Maybe it's a high-stakes business meeting, or, maybe you're just ordering a coffee. Everything is going fine.
You're feeling confident.
Right. You know exactly the complex thought you want to communicate. You have all the advanced vocabulary lined up in your head, and then right before you speak, you freeze.
Oh, yeah, the classic deer in the headlights.
It is a full-on cognitive traffic jam. Your palms get sweaty, your brain starts spinning, and you are completely paralyzed. And the craziest part about this,
What's that?
you aren't paralyzed by some difficult multi-syllable word. You are frozen by the choice between two incredibly small fundamental verbs.
Yes. Make and do.
Yes. Make and do. You know these words. A toddler knows these words. And yet the English language forces you to choose a path, and suddenly you are entirely stuck.
It's a completely binary choice, but in that specific moment, it feels like a monumental trap. You're forced to make a split-second decision that feels like it carries the weight of your entire fluency.
That's exactly how it feels.
Because if you choose the wrong one, you instantly expose yourself as a learner rather than a fluent speaker.
Right.
Or at least that is the fear. And what's really fascinating here is the sheer cognitive load required to navigate what seems, on the surface, to be a kindergarten-level grammar rule.
Well, okay, let's unpack this. Because anyone who has ever studied English as a second language, or even native speakers who have tried to teach it, knows exactly what we're talking about here.
Oh, for sure. It's a universal struggle.
These two tiny words are the absolute definition of linguistic muddy waters. And today, that is exactly what our deep dive is going to explore. We're looking at a really fascinating source guide today titled Mastering Make and Do, a simple grammar guide.
It's a great piece of material.
It really is. But I want to be clear, our mission today is not just to recite grammar rules to you. If you wanted a list of verbs to memorize, you could just pull up a textbook or do a quick web search.
Right, that wouldn't be very helpful.
Exactly. Instead, we want to look at the underlying logic of this guide. We want to understand its step-by-step methodology for building fluency. And most importantly, we want to explore how the English language fundamentally categorizes human action.
Which is such a deep concept when you really get into it.
It is. Because when you peel back the layers, the difference between make and do is actually a really deep philosophical distinction between basically execution and creation.
That's a great way to frame it. And to understand that philosophy, we really have to look at how this guide approaches the learner right from the start. Because it doesn't open with a chart of verbs or some dense explanation of syntax.
No, not at all.
It actually begins with psychological validation. It addresses that exact mid-sentence paralysis you just described.
Yeah.
It acknowledges the confusion, the hesitation, the internal monologue of asking, should I say make or do?
Yeah, it calls out the exact panic.
And then it delivers a thesis statement that is entirely emotional. It just says, but don't worry, this is normal.
Okay, I actually have to stop you there, though, because when I first read that opening, that whole don't worry, this is normal thing, part of me thought, isn't that slightly patronizing?
Really? You found it patronizing?
A little bit, yeah. Think about it. If you're a 40-year-old executive trying to perfect your business English so you can pitch a merger, does being spoken to like a worried child actually help? Does telling an adult, don't worry, really fix the fact that they just sounded foolish in front of a client?
Well, it's a fair question.
Uh,
But if we connect this to the bigger picture of neuroscience and language acquisition, it's not patronizing at all. It's actually a highly calculated pedagogical intervention.
Okay, I'm listening. How so?
So in the field of linguistics, there's a well-documented concept known as the affective filter. You can kind of think of it as the emotional bouncer at the door of your brain.
The emotional bouncer. I like that.
Yeah. When a learner is anxious, or when they're hyper-aware of their mistakes, or when they feel that intense social pressure in a meeting, their amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, it spikes.
Oh, wow. So it's a real physical reaction.
Exactly. And that spike raises the effective filter. And when the filter is high, the brain literally blocks out new cognitive input to focus on emotional survival. The language processing centers basically shut down.
Wait, really? So you're saying the freezing mid-sentence isn't a failure of memory, it's a physiological threat response.
Precisely.
So the brain is treating the choice between make and do the same way it treats, like, a predator in the bushes.
Yes. The cognitive load of speaking a second language is immense. You're managing pronunciation, vocabulary, syntax, and social cues all at the exact same time. When doubt creeps in, the system just crashes.
That is wild to think about.
So by starting the guide with a direct attempt to lower blood pressure, by normalizing the failure, the author is trying to lower that effective filter. Before any actual grammar can be absorbed, psychological safety has to be established.
Ah, okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the text explicitly promises to use easy words, to proceed step by step, and to repeat many times. It's attempting to bypass the anxious, hypercritical prefrontal cortex and create a relaxed state where natural rhythm can just take over.
Okay, so the anxiety is gone, the learner is taking a deep breath, the bouncer has let them into the club.
Right, they're in.
But, a low heart rate doesn't magically give you vocabulary. Where does the brain actually start building the architecture of this language to solve the problem? Because interestingly, this guide starts with the absolute baseline of human existence.
Which is?
Chores. It literally drops the first pillar of its framework by introducing the domain of do.
Right. The guide establishes the rule for do by linking it directly to general actions and daily routines. It provides a very curated list of examples for the learner to internalize.
Like what?
Things like, I do my homework, I do my work, I do the dishes, I do exercise, I do my job.
Okay, here is where it gets really interesting to me. If we look closely at that specific list, homework, work, dishes, exercise, job, there is a hidden geometry to these words.
Hidden geometry, I like that. What do you mean?
Well, do operates as the engine of daily life. It's the verb of the treadmill. Take the example of doing the dishes. When you stand at the sink and do the dishes, you are not creating anything.
No, not at all.
You aren't taking clay and firing new porcelain plates in a kiln. The plates already exist. You are simply returning them to a clean state. You are managing the entropy of your kitchen.
Oh, entropy management. That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it.
Right, because it's just maintaining what's already there.
Exactly. In physics, entropy is the natural decline into disorder. A kitchen naturally gets messy. Clothes naturally get dirty. A human body naturally loses fitness.
It's unavoidable.
Completely unavoidable. And do represents the continuous human effort required to fight back against that disorder. That's why the guide pairs it with maintenance tasks.
So when you do exercise,
You're maintaining your cardiovascular system. When you do housework, you're maintaining the livability of your home. You're executing a process, but nothing fundamentally new is being birthed into the world.
it's pure execution. The identity of the object you're working on does not change. A dirty dish becomes a clean dish, but it is still just a dish.
Exactly.
And I think that's a crucial distinction for a learner to grasp. The guide is implicitly asking the learner to look at their actions and ask, am I just spinning the wheels of maintenance right now? If you're just keeping the machine running, you are firmly in the territory of do.
And notice how the guide reinforces this. It doesn't just explain the concept, it drills it. It uses examples that imply an ongoing, almost endless commitment.
Like, I do my job.
Exactly. A job is rarely a single finite task that you complete once and never touch again. It's an ongoing exertion of effort over time. The action itself is the defining characteristic, not the final product.
But wait, let me push back on that a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
If I am an architect, right, and my job is to design a skyscraper, the day the building opens, there is a massive, tangible product standing in the middle of the city. I produce that. So why does English still force me to say, I am doing my job while I am designing it?
That's a really sharp question. It's because the English language separates the role from the output.
The role from the output, okay.
Yeah. Doing a job categorizes your behavior as fulfilling an obligation or executing a contracted routine. The building is the output of the work, sure, but the act of sitting at your desk every day, answering emails and drawing blueprints, that is the maintenance of your employment.
Oh, I see. So the job is the treadmill, even if the treadmill powers a factory.
Exactly. And this brings us right to the threshold of the guide's second pillar. When you want to talk about the skyscraper itself, the new thing that now exists, you have to cross over into the domain of make.
Right, because we have this neat, tidy, philosophical division for the treadmill of life. But human beings don't just maintain things. If all we did was manage entropy, we would still be living in caves.
Just keeping the keys very clean.
Exactly, very tidy caves. But at some point, we innovate, we create. And that requires a major cognitive shift for the English learner, moving into the territory where things are actually produced.
And the guide introduces this counter concept very explicitly. It shifts the focus entirely from the process to the product.
How does it define it?
It states that make is used when we create something, when we produce something, or as the guide rather poetically puts it, when something new comes.
When something new comes. I love that phrasing. If do is the janitor maintaining the building, make is the alchemy happening inside the laboratory.
That it's a perfect analogy.
So the guide gives us 3 immediate foundational examples to ground this idea, right? I make food, I make a cake, and I make a plan.
Yes, let's dissect the physical examples first, because they provide the clearest contrast to doing the dishes. When you walk into a kitchen to make a cake, what is the starting condition?
Well, chaos, mostly. Raw materials, flour, sugar, eggs, butter, none of those things are a cake.
Exactly. They're disparate elements with their own separate identities. But when you apply heat and effort, those raw materials fundamentally lose their original identities.
It's transformed.
They merge and transform into a third entirely new entity, a cake, something that did not exist in the universe before you stepped into the kitchen. That is Genesis. That is physical creation.
And the same logic applies to the other examples, right?
Yes, like making breakfast, making lunch, making coffee, or making tea. You're extracting flavor from a bean or a leaf and producing a new beverage.
Okay, the physical creation is easy enough to visualize. The flour becomes a cake, the beans become coffee. But, and here's where it gets tricky, this is where the English language starts playing mind games with the learner.
It definitely does.
Because the guide doesn't stop at physical objects you can eat or drink. It smoothly transitions into abstract concepts. It tells the learner that they must say, make a plan and make a decision.
Right.
How does the language justify categorizing a thought in the same exact bucket as a baked good?
It's so interesting, isn't it? This reveals a fascinating, deeply ingrained quirk of the Anglo-Saxon linguistic mindset. English treats abstract thought processes as manufactured artifacts.
As artifacts.
Yeah, it treats ideas as if they have physical weight and structure.
So English treats the brain like a factory assembly line.
In many ways, yes. Think about the anatomy of a decision. What are the raw materials? You have conflicting options. You have historical data. You have personal opinions. And you have emotional biases.
Right, a bunch of ingredients.
Exactly. All of these are floating around in your consciousness. When you finally make a decision, your mind acts as the smelting furnace. It processes all those disparate data points, burns away the indecision, and forces out a synthesized final product.
Wow.
The decision is treated linguistically as a newly forged object. You have made it.
That is wild to think about. When you make a plan, the future is just this empty, abstract void. But by making a plan, you are a craftsman building cognitive scaffolding. You are constructing a bridge over the unknown.
Beautifully put.
You aren't just doing brain activity, you are manufacturing a conceptual tool.
Exactly.
But what about the final abstract example the guide uses? Because it explicitly warns the learner. You must say, make money. You cannot say do money.
Ah, yes, the money example.
Why is money treated as a creation? Especially since, technically speaking, I didn't print the bills. The Federal Reserve made the money, I just traded my time for it.
That is a brilliant observation, and it cuts to the core of how English-speaking societies historically view value generation.
Okay, how so?
Well, when you say, I do my job, you're focusing on the sweat.
Yeah.
Focusing on the turning of the gears, the execution of the labor. But when you say, I make money, the semantic focus shifts entirely to the yield of that labor.
So it's the difference between mining the gold and holding the gold nugget.
Exactly. From the perspective of your personal economy, that wealth did not exist in your bank account yesterday. Through your effort, you generated new value for yourself.
Right, even though the currency existed somewhere else.
Yes. In the context of your life, it is a newly acquired, newly generated asset. You produced a result. The English language rewards the generation of value with the verb of creation.
It's such an elegant binary when you lay it all out like that. Execution versus creation, maintenance versus genesis, the sweat versus the gold.
It really is.
And if a learner can just hold those two philosophies in their head, they should be fine, right? But of course, knowing the theoretical definitions of these two domains is only half the battle, because human beings do not live in isolated grammar bubbles.
No, we don't. We don't spend 12 hours straight just doing and then another 12 hours just making. Our lives are a constant rapid-fire oscillation between these two states.
And this is where the guide does something truly brilliant from a teaching perspective. It realizes that memorizing a list of verbs is completely useless if you can't access them in real time.
Right, because theory isn't practice.
Exactly. So it takes these two abstract domains and forces them to interact. It builds a timeline.
Yes, it employs a technique we can call situational chaining. Rather than presenting disjointed sentences, the guide maps the grammar directly onto the chronological behavior of a normal human day. It constructs a narrative.
Let's walk through this narrative because the way it anchors the grammar to reality is really fascinating. The guide basically starts your day for you. It says, you wake up in the morning, you say, I do my morning routine, then you say, I make breakfast.
It literally puts the learner inside an episodic memory.
Wait, what's the difference between an episodic memory and, like, just a normal memory?
So the distinction between episodic memory and semantic memory is crucial here. Semantic memory is your brain's encyclopedia. It stores facts, figures, and grammar rules.
Okay, the textbook stuff.
Right. But retrieving information from semantic memory takes effort. Episodic memory, on the other hand, is your brain's autobiography. It stores experiences and sequences of events.
Oh, I see.
By chaining these actions chronologically, the guide is moving the grammar out of the encyclopedia and into the autobiography.
So it's tying the vocabulary to a physical routine.
Exactly.
It's like a dancer remembering their next move, not by thinking about the name of the step, but by remembering where their body is positioned on the stage.
Yes, muscle memory tied to location and sequence.
You wake up, you're groggy, you wash your face, you brush your teeth. That is an established process. It's the baseline maintenance of your body. So naturally, I do my routine.
But then your body physically moves into a different room. You walk into the kitchen, the environment changes.
Right. You grab the eggs and the bread. The goal changes from maintenance to production. Boom, I make breakfast.
Exactly. The physical transition triggers the grammatical transition. And the guide doesn't stop there. It pushes the learner out the front door. It says, now imagine you go to work. You say, I do my work. Later, you say, I make a report.
That sequence perfectly encapsulates the modern professional environment, doesn't it?
It really does.
I do my work covers all the nebulous, invisible effort, the endless emails, the endless meetings, the rearranging of spreadsheets. It is the white-collar treadmill.
Very true.
But I make a report is the deliverable. You have taken all that invisible effort and synthesized it into a tangible 10-page PDF that you can email to your boss. You created an artifact.
It demonstrates how these two verbs are symbiotic.
Yeah.
You cannot make a report without first doing the work required to gather the data. The execution fuels the creation.
Oh, that's a great point. They rely on each other.
Yes. And the guide culminates this chaining technique with a beautiful summarizing paragraph that attempts to capture the entire rhythm of a human day.
Yeah.
It says, in the morning I wake up, I do my routine, I make breakfast, then I go to work. At work I do my job. In the evening I come home, I make dinner, then I relax.
It has this almost hypnotic, metronomic cadence to it. Breathing in, breathing out, doing, making, doing, making.
It's a rhythm.
The guide proudly declares, this is natural English. And it is, because natural English isn't just about syntax. It is about reflecting the actual pulse of human life.
However, as beautiful and rhythmic as that daily oscillation is, transitioning back and forth between these two cognitive states inevitably leads to friction.
Oh, absolutely. The system crashes because while we have this neat, tidy philosophical division, human intuition is incredibly messy.
Extremely messy.
When a learner tries to apply this clean logic in the real world, especially when translating from their native language, their intuition is going to betray them, and the guide anticipates this?
It does. It doesn't just hope you figure out the exceptions.
Right. It actively flags the landmine.
It proactively addresses the gray areas where the logic seems to contradict itself, and it specifically targets the most common, deeply ingrained errors.
And the biggest landmine, the one that almost every single English learner steps on, is what I call the make homework dilemma.
Oh yes, the classic trap.
The guide addresses it head on. It says, some people say I make my homework. This is wrong. The correct sentence is, I do my homework. It offers no wiggle room. It just lays down the law. We do homework. We do not make homework.
It's very firm.
But why is making homework such a universal mistake? I feel like everyone struggles with this one.
There are two layers to this. The first is purely linguistic. Many learners come from backgrounds with Romance or Germanic languages, like Spanish with hacer, French with faire, or German with machen.
Okay.
These languages often use a single, highly versatile verb to cover the concepts of both executing and creating. So a Spanish speaker translating hacer la tarea naturally leans toward the more active-sounding English verb, which feels like make.
That makes total sense linguistically.
But the second layer is purely psychological, and it relates back to our discussion of effort versus output.
Let's explore that psychological clash, because if I'm a high school student and I just spent 4 hours at my desk writing a 6-page essay on the French Revolution, I feel very strongly that I have produced something.
You certainly did.
I sweat over that keyboard. I generated sentences that did not exist yesterday. I have a physical stack of papers to hand to my teacher. It feels like an act of creation. Logically, it feels like I should be allowed to say, I made my homework. Why does English deny the student that satisfaction?
Because in this specific instance, English acts like a very strict bouncer. It ignores the physical output, the essay, and focuses entirely on the nature of the obligation.
The obligation.
Yes. Homework is not categorized as a creative endeavor. It is categorized as an assigned chore. It's a mandatory task required to maintain your status as a functioning student.
Oh, wow. So it defaults back to entropy management. You're just maintaining your grades.
Exactly. It falls firmly under the domain of the treadmill. You are executing a duty. The English language demands that you recognize the obligation over the creation. It does not care how beautiful your essay is. The context of the action is a chore. Therefore, it must be done.
That is linguistically brutal. It strips all the artistry out of the student's hard work.
It does, but it's consistent.
And the guide is relentless in enforcing these boundaries. It attacks another common intuition failure. It says, some people say, I do a cake. This is wrong. We make food. We do not do food.
If you think about how I do a cake sounds to a native speaker, it really highlights why the distinction is so important.
How so?
Well, if do is the verb of maintenance and chores, saying I do a cake, sounds as if the cake is a task you have to suffer through.
Right.
Or perhaps that you were performing maintenance on a baked good.
Right. Hold on. I need to go rotate the tires on my cake. It sounds absurd.
Exactly. It strips away the magic of Genesis. Doing food implies you were just processing it, maybe just chewing it or moving it around the plate like it's a chore. Making food demands the recognition of transformation.
The guide really acts as a strict navigational system here. It points out that I do money is fundamentally incorrect. You must recognize the value generation and say make money.
Yep.
It insists that I do breakfast is wrong. You must make breakfast. It forces the learner to constantly evaluate the metaphysical nature of their actions. Am I maintaining or am I creating?
But here is the reality check.
Okay, hit me.
Knowing that a mistake is wrong logically is only one piece of the puzzle. The deeper, much more terrifying issue is how a learner feels when they inevitably make that mistake in front of another human being.
Ah, yes. Because language is inherently social.
Exactly. You can practice I do my homework in your bedroom all day, but eventually you have to say it to a classmate or a colleague. And making errors in public is the exact thing that spikes that effective filter we talked about earlier.
Right. The fear of public humiliation is the greatest barrier to fluency.
It paralyzes people.
So how does this guide handle the reality of public mistakes? This brings us to a section that I think is incredibly subtle but totally brilliant. The guide doesn't just provide grammar rules, it actually scripts the social interaction of being corrected. It models the etiquette of language learning.
Yes, it scripts social survival. Let's look at the exact dialogue the guide constructs for the learner. It sets a very specific scene. You say, I make my homework every day. This is wrong.
It establishes the failure right there.
Exactly. But then it introduces a crucial element. Your friend corrects you politely. The friend says, you can say, I do my homework.
Your friend corrects you politely. That modifier politely is doing so much heavy lifting there.
Oh, absolutely.
The anxiety in the learner's head tells them that if they say, I make my homework, the native speaker is going to laugh at them, judge their intelligence, or secretly think they're incompetent. The guide actively rewrites that nightmare scenario.
It does.
It tells the learner, no, imagine a safe environment. Imagine a polite friend. It reframes correction. It is not a punishment. It is not a humiliation. It is a gift of information from a peer.
And it also scripts the learner's reaction. It says, you say, oh, thank you. Then you say again, I do my homework every day. It provides a template for grace.
That's huge.
It is. The appropriate response to being corrected isn't to apologize profusely or to feel deep shame or to try and explain why your native language made you say it that way.
Mm.
The appropriate response is simple gratitude, followed by immediate integration.
It takes all the sting out of being wrong. You just say thank you and move on.
Exactly.
But notice what happens immediately after the learner says thank you. They don't pause to analyze why they were wrong. They don't pull out a notebook and draw a diagram of execution versus creation. They just physically repeat the correct phrase out loud. I do my homework every day.
Yes, they say it out loud.
Which highlights something that is impossible to ignore when reading this guide. It relies on relentless, almost obsessive repetition.
The commands to repeat are woven into almost every paragraph. Let's repeat. Let's repeat this idea again. Repeat these slowly. Say these again slowly.
Why is it so demanding about that? I mean, if I'm a smart, capable adult and I read the rule and I understand the logic of the treadmill versus the factory, why do I have to sit there and say, I do my homework out loud 5 times? It feels a bit like right memorization.
Because, as we discussed with the effective filter, analytical understanding is actually the enemy of real-time fluency.
Wait, understanding is the enemy?
In a way, yes. If you have to pause in a conversation and access the prefrontal cortex, the analytical problem-solving part of your brain, to remember the rule for make versus do, you will stutter. The processing time is simply too slow. The conversation will leave you behind.
So understanding the logic isn't enough to actually speak the language.
Exactly. The goal of repetition isn't cognitive understanding. It is muscle memory.
Muscle memory for speaking.
Yes. From a neurological standpoint, you're trying to move that grammatical knowledge out of the slow, analytical prefrontal cortex and down into the basal ganglia, which handles automatic, habitual behaviors. You are literally training the muscles of your mouth, your tongue, your vocal cords, and the automatic neural pathways to simply recognize what feels right physically.
That is such a crucial realization. Language isn't just a math test. It is a physical, athletic act.
It really is.
It's exactly how musicians train. If you are learning to play a complex piece on the piano, you don't just stare at the sheet music and say, okay, logically I understand that this note is an F sharp and this note is a B flat.
No, you have to play it.
Right. Understanding the sheet music doesn't mean you can play the song. You have to sit at the bench and play that scale hundreds and hundreds of times until your fingers just know where to drop without you consciously directing them.
Precisely. Bypassing the rulebook and relying on instinct is the ultimate hallmark of fluency. The guide knows that when you are in a stressful social situation, the rulebook will abandon you.
It always does.
But the physical, muscular memory of having repeated, I make a plan 20 times in your living room will save you. If you accidentally start to form the words, I do a plan, your mouth should literally feel the physical wrongness of the sequence before the sound even fully leaves your lips.
Wow.
That is why it insists, say these again slowly. It is anchoring the grammar into your biology.
It is brilliant pedagogy masquerading as a simple, repetitive grammar lesson. And this relentless, comforting, deeply physical journey brings us to the ultimate philosophy the guide leaves the reader with as we reach the outro.
The conclusion is great.
It wraps up everything with a very quick, very clean final synthesis. It distills the whole lesson back down to its absolute core. Use do for actions, work, tasks. I do my homework. I do my job. I do exercise. Use make for creating things. I make food. I make a plan. I make money. It repeats the binary one last time to ensure that baseline architecture is locked in.
It does. But the true value of the conclusion is not the grammatical summary. It is the final piece of psychological wisdom it imparts.
Yeah, the parting advice.
The text leaves the learner with this. Now think about your life. Speak slowly. Speak clearly. If you make a mistake, it is okay. Try again. You are learning step by step. Now take a deep breath. Relax. You are improving. English becomes easy with practice. Simple sentences are enough.
Take a deep breath. Relax. You are improving. Honestly, I almost want to write that on a sticky note and put it on my bathroom mirror.
It's good advice for anything, really.
It is such a profound, humanizing reminder for anyone trying to master a complex system. Whether you are learning a language, trying to learn a new programming framework, picking up a musical instrument, or just navigating a new phase of your career, mastery requires grace.
Yes.
It requires patience. It requires a fundamental acceptance that you are going to sound a little foolish sometimes. You are going to accidentally say, I do a cake at a dinner party. And that is perfectly fine. The world won't end. You just have to be willing to politely accept the correction, say thank you, and try again tomorrow.
It completely deconstructs the ego of learning. The phrase, simple sentences are enough, is incredibly liberating. It reminds the learner that communication is the goal, not perfection.
Exactly.
You do not need to sound like Shakespeare to be effective, to be understood, or to build a relationship. The guide strips away the academic anxiety and leaves the learner with the pure, functional joy of connecting with another human being.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, slightly provocative thought.
Ooh, I love these.
Throughout this entire discussion, we have been looking at make and do strictly as grammatical tools to help you navigate English vocabulary. We explored how do represents the treadmill of maintenance and how make represents the alchemy of creation. But if we step back, this simple grammar guide has accidentally built a profound philosophical framework for evaluating how we spend our time on Earth.
Oh, wow. Where are you going with this?
Think about it. If making implies bringing something completely new into the world, creating value, generating ideas, producing something tangible that outlasts the moment, and doing implies executing routine tasks, managing the endless entropy of life, and just keeping the machine running, take a hard look at your own daily life.
Okay, that's heavy.
Forget about the English language for a second. Look at your calendar. Look at where you spend your physical and mental energy. Are you spending the vast majority of your time just doing? Or are you carving out enough time for making?
That is a phenomenal question to ponder.
Think about it. See you next time.